The Panama Canal Zone is sovereign United States territory just as much as Alaska is, as well as the states carved from the Louisiana Purchase. We bought it, we paid for it, and General Torrijos should be told we're going to keep it.
In November 1980, Ronald Reagan defeated Jimmy Carter in a landslide election victory. Eight months later, on the night of July 31st, 1981, Omar Torrijos was killed in a fiery plane crash. The circumstances of the incident are unclear. Authorities said that his plane crashed into the side of a mountain, but witnesses said that the plane exploded in flight. Although his death was officially declared an accident, many suspect that he was assassinated. Some think that Manuel Noriega may have been involved, but many are convinced it was the CIA that was responsible.
I'm quite convinced that the CIA killed Torrijos, and this I know quite well because I work with Torrijos. And
Jose Chuchu Martinez was one of Torrijos' closest aides for many years.
They killed him precisely at the moment they had to kill him, at the moment that Torrijos was having a big influence over Central America, especially among the revolutionary movements. They killed Torrijos because Torrijos represented precisely a political solution of the whole Central American problem.
Waiting in the wings for his chance to take power was Colonel Manuel Noriega, the CIA's primary contact in Panama. Noriega was head of Panama's military intelligence and had a long-standing relationship with the United States. He had been on the CIA payroll since the 60s. When George Bush became director of the CIA in 1976, under President Ford, he inherited Noriega as a contact. Despite evidence that Noriega was involved in drug trafficking, Bush kept Noriega on the payroll. In fact, he increased Noriega's salary to more than $100,000 a year and eliminated a requirement that intelligence reports on Panama include information on drug trafficking.
Over the last 20 years, since Manuel Noriega was recruited by the Central Intelligence Agency to be an asset, he has obviously provided many, many important pieces of information to U.S. intelligence.
Peter Kornblue is senior analyst at the National Security Archive. The archive has assembled hundreds of previously classified government documents revealing the details of Noriega's relationship to U.S. intelligence.
They've paid him an incredible amount of money, of American taxpayers' money, and obviously decided that his value to them was so important that his drug smuggling and other illegal activity could simply be ignored.
I, George Herbert Walker Bush, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, that I will support and defend...
After George Bush became vice president under Ronald Reagan in 1981, he was named head of the administration's anti-drug campaign and once again took responsibility for monitoring Noriega's intelligence activities.
Bush, in fact, seems to have been instrumental, even according to the documented evidence the administration itself has made available, in seeing to it that Noriega was well taken care of. And in fact, Admiral Stansfield Turner, the former director of the CIA under Carter, claims that he cut Noriega off, that he removed him from the U.S. payroll. Bush put him back on and, in fact, gave him a raise and developed an even closer relationship than had existed before.
With support from the CIA, Noriega was able to outmaneuver his rivals, and in August of 1983, he became commander of the Panamanian military. As the Reagan administration expanded its covert war against the Sandinista government in Nicaragua, Noriega became increasingly helpful. Working with the CIA and with Israeli arms dealers, Noriega helped coordinate an arms supply network to provide weapons to Contra bases in northern Costa Rica.
It is by now undeniable that the same planes that were carrying arms from Panama into Costa Rica were also carrying drugs. And in fact, the people who were the pilots flying those arms to the Contras and flying drugs on up, eventually reaching the United States, have been indicted and are now serving time.
This operation essentially gave Manuel Noriega the assurance that they would turn a blind eye to his continued brokering of cocaine deals in return for using his network to get the arms to the Contras in northern Costa Rica.
Noriega's involvement in the drug traffic really increased his importance as a source for the CIA and as someone who was able to conduct dirty tricks in the region for the CIA. So it's no accident that the CIA became the most prominent defenders of Noriega against the drug charges, because that's the sort of thing which CIA clients tend to do. Time after time, when we install strongmen in the third world, because we want them to be strong, we want to see them involved with the strongest local economic forces, which time after time are the drug traffic.
Despite Noriega's collaboration with many U.S. covert operations, he was becoming increasingly uncooperative with U.S. objectives in Central America. In 1984, he angered the Reagan administration by hosting Latin American leaders at the Contadora peace talks. The talks called for an end to U.S. intervention in Central American affairs.
Noriega was not the yes man that the United States wanted him to be. He simply didn't like to be pushed around. He certainly didn't like people like John Poindexter or even William Casey coming down to his villa and telling him what he should do or what he shouldn't do.
Then in 1986, the Iran-Contra scandal erupted. Noriega's primary contacts in the administration were now under intense scrutiny.
Oliver North was fired, Poindexter was forced to resign, and William Casey fell ill with a brain tumor. So all three of Noriega's major protectors were out of government, and that led quickly to a shift in U.S. policy.
Sentiments within Panama were turning against Noriega as well. For 3 years, Noriega worked with the DEA in a sting operation codenamed Operation Pisces. In 1987, with Noriega's assistance, authorities arrested hundreds of suspects and froze millions of dollars in Panama's banks, severely disrupting the money laundering business. The financial community was outraged, and Noriega's opponents mobilized against him. Back in Washington, Noriega's opponents lobbied and testified against him, accusing him of murder, corruption, and drug running. The U.S. media quickly turned it into a major story.
United States, but relations with Panama are under a new cloud tonight because of news reports
Senator
alleging...
Jesse Helms charged today that the military strongman of Panama, Manuel Noriega, is the #1 drug trafficker in the Americas. Helms said depending on how the situation with
The reports
Noriega
from U.S. intelligence have also led to new investigations on Capitol Hill.
Faced with increased pressure, both in the U.S. and Panama, Noriega introduced a wave of brutal repression, attacking protesters in the streets and jailing hundreds of opponents. The Reagan administration now openly called for his removal.
We do want Noriega out of there and a return to a civilian democratic government.
But behind the scenes, the administration was secretly negotiating with Noriega, promising not to indict him on drug charges if he would cooperate with U.S. objectives in Central America. Gabriel Gemma, director of the Independent Commission of Inquiry on the U.S. invasion of Panama, spoke to Noriega about his negotiations with the U.S.
General Noriega told us that there were a number of demands placed on him directly, both through Poindexter and other meetings, where the State Department pressured him to change the Panamanian government's policy on several issues. He said that by far the most pressing was a demand by the United States that Noriega and the Panamanian government allow the U.S. to expand their military presence in Panama and to renegotiate the treaties to allow them to keep control over the 14 bases, military bases, that presently exist in Panama.
Noriega refused to agree to the U.S. demands or to relinquish his power in Panama. In February 1988, 2 U.S. federal grand juries in Florida indicted Noriega, accusing him of drug trafficking, money laundering, and racketeering. It was the first time a foreign head of state had ever been indicted in the United States. The U.S. now undertook a systematic effort to overthrow Noriega. Economic sanctions were stepped up and additional troops were dispatched to Panama.
The United States tonight declared in effect that Panama's General Manuel Noriega is a threat to this country's national security.
Mr. Noriega, the drug-related, indicted dictator of Panama. We want to bring him to justice, we want to get him out, and we want to restore democracy to Panama. And so when you read these outrageous charges by a drug-related, indicted dictator, discount them. They are total lies.
Still unable to force Noriega from power, the United States turned its efforts to influencing the upcoming 1989 Panamanian national elections. The Bush administration, working through the CIA and the National Endowment for Democracy, funneled more than $10 million into the opposition's slate of candidates. Presidential candidate Guillermo Endara, a wealthy corporate lawyer educated in the United States, and his vice presidential running mates, Guillermo Billy Ford and Ricardo Arias Calderon.
If the same scenario that those elections occurred in had taken place in the United States, they would have been illegal. In the United States, accepting money from a foreign government for the purpose of influencing a domestic election is illegal.
Those elections were irregular from the beginning. How can you call it a fair election? The strategy was applied in Panama, they applied in Nicaragua, and they were applied to every government who disagreed with the U.S. foreign policy. They used economical sanction to starve people, then to impose a vote on these people, because people vote to get bread when they're hungry. And I don't think that's democracy.